Hello, everybody, and welcome to Greet the Week. I'm Jan Moray with my co-host, Mona Duncan. And we also have one of our regular guests, Jerry Martin, on here today. And Mona has come up with a subject for the day, giving the benefit of the doubt. That sounds like a great topic, Mona. So what's on your mind?
Okay, well, I've been thinking about, some of the past conversations that we've had and was looking at all of the issues in life, and there's a lot of them.
There are. It seems like we get more and more every day.
Right. I mean, just to name a few, there's politics and religion and sex and size and age and, socioeconomic and intelligence and,
Warming.
and what?
Global warming.
Right, global warming, and just so many things, and there is such a wide gap or a wide spectrum within each one of those individual things. And I was thinking about, how that you said, well, just don't read the news, or that you,
right.
Don't continually digest it. And I thought about several years ago, an uncle of mine had surgery, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and anyway, he came and stayed several weeks with us. And during that time, we shared all kinds of, he shared, I should say, all kinds of stories about whenever we were kids and whenever I was a kid and, the nieces and nephews and everything. And then also he was very adamant about not looking at the ads that were in the paper. And he said, no, you just see that stuff you want and you just want, And I thought he was crazy because, what kind of a crotchety old person is he anyway? But you know what? Over the few weeks of him being with us, I began to realize that if I didn't look at the ads so much and have this long list of all these things that was on sale, it's amazing how it began to help our budget.
Right. That's true. That's true.
Right. And I'm not talking passivity or ignoring or not having enough courage to do anything about, the different issues that's going on, social issues and so forth. I'm talking about a very risky, gut-wrenching personal decision as to how we can best be an influencer, and rather than pushing away, but drawing to, so that we can connect with, rather than, be a part of the solution, rather than a part of the problem.
Yeah. Oh, I like that, being part of the solution, because you hear people complain a lot about all those things you mentioned earlier, and I'm like, well, so what are you doing about it?
Yeah.
You need to be using that energy doing something instead of complaining.
Right. And complaining, is looking for more information. It's looking for how to fix something. Complaining is a very accepted way to express our unhappiness.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is looking at Brian Townley, who is the guy I went to school with, and now he's all over LinkedIn and writes some wonderful, wonderful articles. And he had an article in there about emotional intelligence.
Okay.
And he ranked, of all the things of emotional intelligence, he ranked the very number one, in his opinion, as being forgiveness.
Okay.
Especially toward those that don't think they have anything to be sorry for, or toward those that are not the least bit compassionate toward some of the things that we just talked about,
Yeah.
To have a spirit of forgiveness directed toward them. And so I just been doing some more additional thinking about this and asked myself some questions, that self-reflection. And one is, who do I become when I think what I think is true?
Okay. Right. Yeah.
When I think what I think is true, who does that turn me into? And I think about that a lot.
Do you really?
I really do. Especially when I was working with the residents and, with the inmates, and of all the people that were there, which were, drug abusers, not only using, but selling and abusing others with it, and fraud and rape and murder and child abuse and sexual predators and so forth, to me, they were the hardest ones to deal with, or for me personally to deal with,
Sexual predators.
Yeah, and a child.
Right.
Yeah. And I had to do a lot of thinking. Whenever I think, who do I become whenever I think that what you're doing is so atrocious? And it doesn't discount the fact that it was atrocious, that not only did it hurt you, but it hurt others. And, it was looking at the fact that it does not take away from their humanity. And that we as human beings, as we see something a little bit differently, we can change our mind. And in changing our mind, we can be sorrowful, or we can come to the point that I did it. It's not to discount that, and it's not to say that there's not ramifications for those things, because there are. No matter what we do, there's some kind of reward, some kind of a consequence.
Yeah.
Or, whether it's a negative or a positive. And then, whenever I'm thinking those thoughts, who do I become toward that person?
Yeah, right.
And is that really me? And do I want it to be me?
Yeah. One of the lessons Dr. Glasser teaches with the whole choice theory thing, and when he's talking about total behavior and about all we do is behave, and the things that we do, no matter how horrible it sounds, it's the best thing we could do at the time. And when you think of somebody that the best thing they could do at the time was whatever crime they did, you just say, wow, what kind of a life are they living?
Right.
Perspective. I mean, it's still terrible what they did, but how did that happen?
Right. And that we are driven by those needs that are inside.
Right.
And that has always been, even though now it lights up on the brain scans to show you what part's lighting up,
Right. Yeah.
But that need was still there even before we could see it, just like gravity was still here even before it was named and ruled a law. And how we can get those needs so mixed up, as in thinking pleasure is fun. And it is initially, but it can lead to so much stuff that is, and whether that is fun and reading what is for sale and going and buying it and, putting you in jeopardy with your budget and paying the house payment and all that stuff, or whether it's something else, like that leads to all kinds of addictions and perversions and mental issues.
Yeah. And it's so hard to catch it at the beginning when something like that is happening, because you don't really realize what you're doing to yourself.
Right.
And I mean, you're just looking to feel good. You're looking to find something to help you to feel better. And it's so sad when you find things that really destroys you later on as something that you're choosing to do. But then on some of these things, once you start, it's very difficult to stop.
It's that slippery slope, and difficult to stop or to know. And so, just this past week, I was in a situation, and I found myself just being so critical. It was in a gathering. It was a kind of like a board meeting type thing, and I found myself being so critical. And I stopped and I thought, they're doing the best they can, and I'm thinking, oh boy, do they need training? They need more information. And I didn't like the criticalness that was coming. It was I talk about being accepting, and so you do it by just doing it, as with anything, Nike time. And so it's doing the best we can under the pressure of the moment, whether it is the temptation, whether it is being put in a position of doing something that you're not comfortable with, whether, whatever it is, it's under the pressure of the moment, doing the best that we can and giving a little grace. And so, it's always looking at self and realizing that maybe there are some factors that they see that I don't see. And so therefore, how am I being prejudiced against something?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know whenever I first started speaking, I had an office at the Small Business Development Center and advertised in the paper, and I had all kinds of topics, invited people to come just for an hour, and we'd have a little training and then just discussing. And anyway, there was one gentleman that was there every time. I mean, he was really, and anyway, I began to ask myself, am I prejudiced toward this person because of his age or because of his socioeconomic, or whatever? And I began to really do some deep, deep thinking about that. And I came to the conclusion that I wasn't prejudiced toward that genre as a whole.
Yeah.
But that one person was pretty difficult to get along. And there are people that are difficult to get along with. And there are reasons to dislike someone, but the package deal is never part of it. And someone's perception of something may be horrendously askewed, but it doesn't demean their worth and value as a human being. And it's being kind and considerate and having a forgiving attitude toward them that is absolutely ranks way up there in emotional intelligence.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
And being civil with and looking for how we can get along. Maybe not spend a lot of time together, but how we can get along.
Right, right. The person could still, make you feel, some irritation or anger, or result in your feeling that way.
Yeah. It's a trigger for those feelings. I mean, it's total behavior.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
then the key is, okay, I'm feeling this, but I don't have to act out on what I'm feeling.
Right.
I respect this person. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's got a lot more good in him than
I'm seeing from my perspective and my point of view. And then I think back to my grandchildren. I have 5 grandchildren, but the 2 oldest ones, the oldest now, and then they, eventually learned and taught their siblings coming on up, that they were real close together, like 18 months apart, 16 months apart. And, we'd come down and we'd play, and I had Play-Doh and colors and, things projects for them to work on, because they were very creative and very intelligent. They like to make things and put things together, and the little popsicle sticks and all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And one would be designing something and coming up with it, and the other one would look at it, oh yeah, that's great, but I have a better idea.
Oh.
I have a better idea. And it wouldn't be long to, there was this and so I would go over there and I would look at what they were doing and what they were coming up with and all this, and I'd say, oh, but I have a better idea. Oh, you have another idea.
Yeah.
And just beginning to, put that it's another idea. Maybe better, may not be, and you do what you think is best for your project, and you do what you think is best for yours. And it's realizing that sometimes we can be, because my perception is so much better than yours, and maybe it is and maybe it isn't. That can,
what's better for you, what's right for you, and the way you look at the world, and somebody else looks at the world a little differently.
Right. Right. And I think last week we mentioned Socrates, and how he said that the unexamined life is not worth living. And so it's really to look at our own life and examine it. That self-evaluation, but it's not just self with self, because we can, that's the way I see it, and that's the way it is. But it's self with self, but it's looking at the input of what is of others, of the end result. What is the what is the input? It's not just my thinking.
Yeah.
But it's the input is large, and so in general, is it drawing closer together or is it pushing further apart?
Yeah.
Is it being a part of the solution or is it being part of the problem?
And when you're taking somebody else's input to believe that they're really just providing information and not trying to change you, or not trying to say that their way is a better way.
Right.
To let you know that there is another way of looking at things than your way of looking at things.
Right. And that is information. I'm giving information, they're giving information.
Mm-hmm.
And the information I'm receiving, I may not be seeing the whole thing, so it's giving the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Giving the benefit of the doubt that just the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I mean, it applies in so many situations, because you in a conversation and somebody says something and it strikes up anger or frustration or irritation inside you, and because you've jumped to some kind of a conclusion about what their intent is.
Right.
But instead of jumping to that conclusion about the intent, it's like, okay, this person is just saying is just providing information. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're really not trying to be critical or feel superior or anything like that. They're just saying what's on their mind. And so let's talk about that. So what's behind that? And but talk about it in a positive way instead of accusing them. Let's get clarification to really understand where it is they're coming from and what they mean by it. Maybe they didn't understand you, which your intent.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. Jerry, was you going to say something? Make a comment?
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm listening to what you're saying, and it seems to me that it applies to individual relationships, one-on-one relationships,
But not groups?
But not necessarily large-scale kinds of relationships. Any large issues, politics or religion or just about anything. I mean, I guess Glasser, being a psychiatrist, was more involved with individual relationships. And I think that's what you two are talking about, isn't it? You're looking at it more from a psychological point of view than a sociological or anthropological point of view.
Well, Jerry, I don't see it that way. And just exactly like Uncle Jesse, and not just the newspaper. I mean, he did read the newspaper. He really knew everything about the news, and it was his way, believe me. But it was his idea that if you don't feed on all of that, what is for sale, you can probably live life more within your budget. And although it was a one-on-one thing, yes, it was a one-on-one thing. But I'm telling you what, it has far exceeding benefits in my life and has been passed on and passed on and passed on to a numerous of others,
Well, I understand that. I agree completely. I never read the ads. None. Zero.
But I'm using small examples and taking it to a larger scale. Well, just like being in that meeting just this past week, and that there was, I found myself having all of these critical, and just my change of mind. Not only did it change me, but my input into the meeting was more acceptable, and it was more peace rendering toward the whole group. Because it was getting to be pretty,
Finger pointing.
Yeah.
Are you still referring to the one man who's kind of hard to get along with? Is that?
No, I'm not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm lost then. I missed your jump then.
Because even in that one band that was hard to get along with, there was others in the class. But that was several years ago. That was back when I was just learning myself, or still learning.
But don't you find that these days that very often it's hard to know who to trust, what to believe anymore? There's so much BS, excuse my language,
Yes.
going around that, I think a lot of people intentionally try to confuse the issue.
But you see, Jerry,
On a very large scale, I'm talking about national, worldwide kind of stuff. I think there's so many lies being told now that I don't believe were the case when we were children. I mean, you could trust people when we were children. I don't trust much anymore. I don't know. It's hard. I mean,
and who are we? Who do we become when we think those thoughts? More distrusting. Who do we become when we think those thoughts? More distrusting.
I missed the last two words of your sentence.
Who do we become? Who do I become when I think those thoughts?
Those thoughts. Those are the two words I missed. Okay.
Then I become more distrusting. I become more angry. I become more belligerent. I become more disdainful of that particular person.
No, it's not. Well,
and it's not to say that there's not truth there. Back to Socrates. He says,
the antidote is to trust everybody?
No. The antidote is to know who you can trust and to not feed on and to not coat the distrust toward the person that you distrust, to not coat it with vile. Just turn away from them because you distrust them and go to someone you do trust.
But a lot of times it's hard to know who you trust and who you don't.
It is hard.
I mean,
it is hard. It is extremely hard.
Nutritionists, for example, or scientists, I honestly believe that any industry can hire 3 or 4 unemployed PhDs to do a study and prove anything that you want. If you grow tomatoes, they'll come up with a study that'll say tomatoes cure cancer.
Right.
You can hire experts. You'd say
there's a proverb that says, they that profess themselves to be wise become fools. And so sometimes we just have to let that foolishness play itself out.
But it hasn't played itself out. It gets worse.
Well, but it does. It has from time immemorial. It has played itself out again and again and again. Just don't get stuck with where you are. And it's continuing to play itself out. It'll play itself out.
Well, don't you think trust has taken a beating?
Yeah, I think you've got to be real careful with the things that you read. And you need to do your own research. You need to be an informed consumer.
Yes.
You can't take what you see and what you read for truth anymore. No, I agree it's certainly not that way.
That sounds good, but most of us are not equipped.
But you can be equipped. You can be equipped. You can be equipped. You can be equipped.
Well, you can find other organizations and other groups who think similarly to the way you think, and you start researching them and seeing what they're publishing and the kind of studies they're doing and whether it's reasonable or not. You have to do a lot of work. I mean, it's hard, but you have to find what makes sense to you and stay informed, because you can't just follow what everybody says. You go crazy because you get so many mixed messages.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, Socrates, may I give a personal example? Socrates. Well, first of all, I want to go back to Socrates, not that that's a personal example, but Socrates had 2 basic
You don't even look like Socrates.
No, I don't even know what the guy looked like. Anyway, Socrates had two basic tenets that he talked about, okay? One was that we carry within us inherited beliefs, values, ideals, prejudices, that we carry those within us, and we're not even aware of them. You know, from our upbringing, from the tribe that we grew in, and we had these, they spawned me. They have to be right. So we carry a lot of those things within us, even though, you may have had disagreements and all this, even though, like my grandchildren, I have a better idea. Mm-hmm. You kind of carry those things within you. And then his second premise was that we are surrounded by individuals who are certain that they see, they know, and they have absolute truth. And so we have to give the benefit of the doubt that you are so positive about this. Well, I kind of doubt it. And go with the doubt, because we are intuitive. And if your total being does not register, you know what? Trust that initially. But don't just go with it in its totality, because we're too easy to lie to ourselves and to fool ourselves.
Well, especially when we're hearing something we want to believe.
Exactly. And to think that little thing that titillates is fun, and it turns out to not be. Or that little thing that seemed to cure is the cure, and it becomes the crux, it becomes the difficult. And so in my own life, and again, it's talking about a one-on-one, but it's not. Because there was something that happened to me as a child that one of my first memories that I ever had. What was the first memory you ever had that you knew was your memory, that it wasn't somebody telling you a story about, or, that you knew was your memory? How old? Well, and I thought, I can't be remembering that. I can't be. Because it was just not pleasant. It was, anyway. But it messed with my mind. I mean, it messed my psychic. And fast forward years later, and there was times that, I would think about that and think about it and dismiss it and cry and be angry and act out. And anyway, then fast forward several years, and was back home, there was several cousins together, and we were all just chit-chatting and talking, and a cousin that I had admired, she was about 10, 12 years older than me, that I had admired. I mean, as a kid, I just really looked up to her. She was the epitome of womanhood and everything else. And anyway, and in the process of our 4 or 5 there just talking, and she made the comment about how she had such compassion for me. And that how as a kid, her heart just so went out to me. And she gave a couple of instances. And I mean to tell you right there in that moment, and I'm already in my 50s, okay? There was an instant healing. An instant healing. And the subject wasn't broached, it wasn't anything. And I have thought back on that again and again and again, that the compassion in my cousin that I saw maybe 4 or 5 times a year on family gatherings and stuff, that my cousin and her compassion and her loving and her pity and her caring, I think it held a place for my sanity. And I think we can do that for anyone you want to put a name in. Whether it's the politicians, whether it's the preachers, whether it's the county commissioner, whether it's the local or national or whatever, as we can hold a little bitty place of forgiveness there, maybe we can hold a place for their sanity. As we can realize we're all doing the best we can with whatever it is and realize that, you know what, even doing the best I can, okay, for just the three of us right here on that raise your hand as high as you can, both of them. Would you please do that? As high as you can, raise them as high as you can.
Are we being held up?
Now raise them a little bit higher. A little bit higher, raise just a little bit higher. See, we always have a little extra measure within us that we can give a little bit more. We can give a little bit more understanding. We can give a little bit more room for growth to ourselves, but then not only to ourselves, to others also.
I think it's very interesting that you've worked with prisoners, and I'm sure you have a very different perspective than a lot of people do, because a lot of people don't give them the benefit of the doubt.
I know.
You could see them as that hurt person inside, and really talk to them. So that's a whole perspective that a lot of people just can't understand is even there.
Yeah, and there was even one of the directors there at one of the staff at the facility that was, I mean, always telling them that they was just going back. He knew their future, you know, that you'll never amount to anything, and probably repeating what many of their parents had said, and everything else, you'll never amount to anything. And I know one day he was always, whenever people would leave, he would keep up with them, and he would always tell you, you know what your boy did? I said, now, why don't you tell me what he did?
Yeah.
You know, especially if they was back in prison again or another crime or whatever. Anyway, he called me a bleeding heart liberal. And I said, well, you know what? I am. And I said, my heart even bleeds for you, because your criticism, your condemnation, your failure to see any good in anyone has to come from a really deep wound, a really deep place of hurt. And I care. Because I know it's so easy to spit venom. It is. And it is not, you know, that venom in the snake is also part of the thing that cures the snake bite.
Yeah, right. Right.
And it's realizing, you know, to extract and to have enough compassion to hold space for someone's, to be vulnerable, to be courageous, to go against the norm without rebelling against it.
I would think a lot of people who have committed crimes or who are just very angry don't have a lot of people in their life who are nice and
right
to them. And,
exactly.
and so they don't know what it's like to have a healthy, happy, pleasant relationship.
So it's give compassion.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's kind of scary at first, I'm sure, because they don't understand it. It feels weird. It's different because they're not used to being treated that way. And I'm sure at first they fight back because they know they can get you to spit venom back at them. And if you don't, it has to open their eyes up a little bit.
Yeah, the current Reader's Digest, I was just reading it last night. It was about this lady was talking about how she was a bully.
Yeah.
And yeah, she was a bully, and anyway, then there came a time in her life when she was bullied, and she came to the conclusion that, you know, every bully, that bullies are bullies because they were bullied.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hurt people heal people, and whole people, I mean, hurt people hurt people,
okay,
and whole people heal people. And as we become whole, as that, I'm not saying, you know, and you'd be absolutely foolish to if someone is a theft, you're not going to give them the bank deposit to take to the bank for you.
right.
You know, you have to set boundaries. Yes. But it's also being willing to, within those healthy boundaries, and that maybe every word that comes out of their mouth is not a lie. There may be a little smidgen of truth in it, and be willing to give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're seeing and knowing more than I'm seeing and knowing. And I'm talking from the garbage man all the way up to the highest echelon. From the highest echelon all the way down to what the lowest may be. And I don't want to, I appreciate what you said last week, Jerry, about why are loons crazy. And you know what? That convicted me, and I thank you for that. I will continue to say, I may be crazy, but I'm not going to give a likeness to it. Because loons have worth and value on planet Earth, and who am I to call them crazy? Just because they have this natural oddity about them.
Yeah, yeah.
And I appreciate that. I do. Because
I'm mostly joking about that.
Well, I took it as a joke.
I don't take it personally. If you want to call a loon anything you want to call them, I go ahead.
And I took it seriously. And that's what I like to do with anything that I have this, I want to take it serious, whether it's said to me, or I want to take it seriously, but not personally. Because if I take it personally, then I take it to that wound. And boy, it can really add gall to it. There's some deep pus pockets. And if I take it there, it just adds to the sickness. It doesn't add to the healing.
Yeah. Right. Good discussion today. I think we're out of time.
We are.
But it's good.
It's time, anyway.
Nice to keep going. It's a lot of food for thought there. A lot of things to think about. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week for another edition of Greet the Week.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.